What's the scariest thing you've woken up to in the middle of the night? I woke up to sound of scampering raccoon-like creature inside my room zooming about the night before Christmas. It then bounced on my bed, jumped off and ran out. Raccoon sized. I followed it and it was laying on the couch and barked at me adorably. Apparently my parents got my sister a puppy and it had escaped during the night because it was lonely. They had it in an uncovered puppy kennel in the living room and he climbed out. The interesting thing is he didn't like my older sister and instead clung to me, and he became my dog when she moved out and couldn't take him. Best friend to this day. Went to bed at midnight. Woke up in searing pain at 2 AM. Such grave pain that I thought my appendix had burst. Flipped on the lights to take a Tylenol only to find I had rolled over on a black widow spider that had bit me. My son has had a scout since he was born. It's this green dog that plays music and speaks when you press his paw. And you can program it to say your child's name. He also speaks in a young child's voice. Since my son was an infant at the time, all his toys were pretty much contained to our living room as he wasn't crawling yet. Every night before we went to bed, we would put his toys away in a wicker basket that we had beside our entertainment system. I distinctly remember putting Scout back in the basket. I woke up at 2 in the morning to Scout's voice under my bed, saying, "Do you want to play?" Son's name? I was halfway to my son's room to get him and get the FCK away from that haunted ass toy before my brain turned on and I realized that my cat had dragged Scout under our bed and was currently humping the shit out of it. F-king cats. Man. Fairly strong earthquake and kidney stone. Not on same night. Thankfully. My dinkus neighbor was drunk and thought my apartment was his. He broke the lock on my door. He then opened up the door to my bedroom and scared the crap out of me at 1 AM. I screamed and he apologized profusely and asked if I wanted to drink Modelo with him and his wife at their house. There had been a baptism so everyone was partying it up across the way. I went because they're nice. And they had tamales. Edit. Holy cow, this got really popular. I'm female. So I was terrified for a ton of different reasons. My neighbors are from Guatemala. So these were the kind with banana leaves. A broken lock was worth the tamales, yes. We're still on good terms. My neighbors are harmless unless you're a lock. Or a tamale. My F-king friend standing over me in the middle of the night while sleeping at his place. Moth F-ka scared the life out of me. I'm sure there were worse things. But one time when I was a kid, my parents placed a full body shaped Elmo balloon in my room while I was sleeping. Ever woken up to a floating body? Sleeping at home. Alone. I woke up one night when I rolled over and someone else's limp arm flopped across my chest. I freaked out. Grabbed the arm. Flung it away. And tried to scramble out of bed before realizing that it was my own arm. It had completely lost all feeling up to the shoulder. Daughter had this Minnie Mouse baby doll that crawled on all fours when you touched a button on its back. Wife and I woke up at 2 AM to the sound of the doll's creepy laugh. Went out to the living room and the doll was walking straight into the corner. Each time it stopped it would just start right over again. The button wasn't broken or anything. So I'm not sure what happened. Donated it. Someone standing in the bedroom doorway. He flipped on the light then flipped it off. I woke my husband up and this guy walked out of the apartment. My husband ran out after him in his underwear. I went to the kitchen and got a knife and ran after my husband. Turns out, the woman who lived there before us had broken up with her boyfriend and moved without telling him or getting back his key. I guess he came back to see her. At 3 in the morning. I used to live a few minutes away from Buncefield Oil Storage Facility. It was the 5th largest oil depot in the UK. On the morning of the 11th of December 2005 it exploded. The explosion threw me out of my bed. And the doors of our house burst open. I looked outside my bedroom window and the sky was engulfed by a giant fireball. 11-year-old me genuinely thought it was the end of the world. It still baffles me as to how no one died during that incident. I got up to go to the bathroom. and didn't turn my bedroom light on, so I didn't see that anything was amiss. When I got to the toilet, I suddenly realized that my hands were covered in blood up to my elbows. It wasn't dripping wet, but it wasn't dry either. I didn't have any cuts or seem to have any injury of any kind. When I washed my hands, I checked everywhere. No injury. What the hell was happening? When I went back to my bedroom, I turned the light on, and half of my pillow was covered in blood as well. Almost exactly down the middle. It was then that I realized I'd gotten a nosebleed and been wiping at it in my sleep. And it must have stopped just before I woke up, so I didn't have any clue left on my body as to where I'd bled from. I was living in a very dry area at the time, so nosebleeds were a common issue for me. That's the only time I've gotten one during my sleep though. Open up. Police. We have a search warrant. It was about 6 AM. Accompanied by banging that was loud as shit. Turns out it was for the apartment beneath my bedroom window, but I sat straight up and my first thought was, oh no. They got me. Despite being one of the least shady people alive. Exploding head syndrome, alternately termed episodic cranial sensory shock, is a benign condition in which a person experiences unreal noises that are loud and short, like a bomb exploding or a gunshot, when falling asleep or waking up. These noises are often jarring and frightening for the person. Neither the cause nor the mechanism is known, though harmless in and of themselves. Episodes have been known to create distress or impairment in the lives of individuals. It happens to me once or twice a year. It keeps things interesting. Housemate coming home drunk after midnight from a Halloween party dressed as Jason from Friday 13th. Walked into my room by mistake in his full Voorhees costume and just stood in the middle of the room looking around trying to work out where he was. Woke me up as my door opened and I was frozen terrified for a good 30 seconds. Bought a lock for my door the following week. But do you want to see my new chainsaw and hockey mask? I lived W. My oldest sister and her 2 daughters. Her youngest, 3 years old, was a sleepwalker. She was tiny, white blonde and liked to wear a white nightgown that was too big for her. Yeah. Wake up to the sound of thumb sucking right next to my head. Roll over and see the world's shortest ghost. We had a rooster who was pretty aggressive, but he watched the rest of the chickens. He was so aggressive though that only certain people could go near him, otherwise he'd attack and spur. For a while he had free reign of our yard, but we had to pin him because he'd attack people. Well, he'd figured out he could sort of halfway fly out and get back into our yard after we'd all gone to sleep. One night we woke up to what sounded like a young girl screaming at the top of their lungs. We ran outside to see what it was and old Bark, his name, was walking around decapitated. He'd picked a fight with a raccoon and lost. But that sound he made that night still haunts my dreams sometimes. Someone slamming on the door of the apartment across the hall screaming your apartment is on fire. It sounded like it was on mine. Woke up and immediately started choking on smoke. The fire alarm then went off. Everything ended up being okay. Someone flicked a cigarette butt off their balcony. It landed on the one a few floors beneath it and set their patio furniture on fire. Hence why someone saw it before the alarm went off. It was just so disorienting and terrifying to wake up to the pounding on the door, the screaming, and the smoke. In late. But well. One night I swore I heard a man's voice downstairs. I slowly crept downstairs, found nothing, and went to bed. Next night. Again. I swore I heard a man's voice downstairs. Again I crept downstairs and again found nothing. Third night. This time I heard a woman's voice downstairs. Again nothing. Fourth night was a Saturday and I was up super late, and thus was downstairs when I heard my laptop say your virus definitions have been updated. Apparently I'd gotten the Avast update that enabled voice reporting by default and randomized between a male and female voice. Turned that shit off right quick. 8-year-old son at the foot of my bed. Vomiting blood. Sorry. Yes, he was okay. It was a rare complication following having his tonsils out, and he actually managed to do it twice. Which never happens. I'm a firefighter and have seen some shit. But goodness gracious, I don't think my eyes have ever gone so wide. It took a couple of serious deep breaths to collect myself to give him a hug. Dial an ambulance and start treatment. I was house sitting for friends and I heard their dog bark at like 4:00 in the morning. He always barks at passing cars, so I told him to shush and settled back down to go to sleep. Then I heard voices inside the house. I freaked the FCK out. Shouting, "Who is that? Who the FCK is there?" Luckily it was my friends coming back earlier than they thought they would. The loud sound of breaking glass from downstairs. Husband armed himself and crept downstairs. No intruder. One of the cats knocked over a centerpiece that exploded all over the floor. The clear and obvious sounds of an animal in the bedroom. We had no pets. I'm in the UK, so my sleepy brain at first thought it was a rat. Or several rats fighting for their lives. After some minor panicking, it turned out to be a pigeon trapped behind the boarded up fireplace. Slept on the sofa that night. The unmistakable sound of a pet getting ready to vomit on the floor. Terrifying. A mortar alarm while sleeping in a tent in Afghanistan. You have about 30 seconds to get out of bed. Get fully dressed. Get all your gear and weapon and get the FCK outside. Pretty TTY, especially when you had been up for over 24 hours straight and you get an hour of sleep before being violently woken up. My daughter had a ring around the Rosie doll when she was little. You put the doll's hands together and it would sing the song. Anyway, she left it out outside one night apparently, and the dew in the grass shorted it out. I woke up in the middle of the night to this faint ring around the Rosie song playing over and over. It was creepy and we didn't have an outdoor light in the backyard, so I had to go by myself with a flashlight and search the yard for this creepy doll. I had a Siamese mixed cat and one summer it started to sing in the middle of the night. Sounded like a crying baby right in my condo. Freaked me the hell out the first time I heard it. Sounds like my stepmom's cat. Tuxedo cat. That at night would walk around the house meowing. But it sounded exactly like he was saying hello. Woke up to the feeling of something on my face. Tried to brush it off and in my half asleep state thought it was attacking me. Cue absolute freak out because something is crawling all over me and I can't get it off. My neighbors on the east side yelling at me to wake up and get out of my house. The garage on the west side was burning and there was a car inside. They were sure it was going to blow up. When I was young-ish, I woke up to the sound of people quietly moving around downstairs when I believed I was home alone. Shitting myself and still confused from the sleep, I grabbed a telescopic wheel brace as the only available weapon. Heart beating out my chest. Fight or flight reflex in full effect when I heard the sound of footsteps up the stairs outside my room. Hand on the door handle and ready to fight for my life. I hear my dad's voice. Immediately realize my parents had got back from holiday earlier than I expected. The endorphin rush was intense. We have a window AC unit basically right above our bed. One night, ice must have gotten built up inside, and it fell onto the fan that blows the air out. I remember hearing a loud bang and then being sprayed in the face by liquid. My first thought was that someone broke in and shot my wife and I got covered in blood. F-king terrifying. Edit. The liquid was cold. And that should have been an instant giveaway that it wasn't blood. But I was in such a panic and confused from just being woken up that the temperature didn't register right away. An earthquake. But you see, I'm no California dweller who would half expect to die in the night on any given evening thanks to unforgiving geological processes. No. I'm in England. And an earthquake was a novel experience for me. I thought a train was approaching my house and even awoke. Braced for impact. I was utterly terrified afterwards, as I'd taken the ground's solidity and reliability for granted. My ceiling fan pulling off my ceiling and hanging a few inches from my face. Back in my couch surfing days, I spent the night at a ranch in Enumclaw and woke up to a Great Dane humping my face. Heard a sound like low thunder or a big truck coming down the street. Next thing I know, whole house starts shaking. 4 point something earthquake. Not your average occurrence for St. Louis. MO. My laptop screen lighting up. It would be normal except I closed my laptop before heading to bed. Fell asleep on the couch. Woke up around 3 AM to my cat clawing my face. Every time I tried to go back to sleep, he started again. Finally I got pissed off and decided to put him in another room. As soon as I stood up I smelled natural gas. The pilot light on my stove had gone out. Little guy saved my life. My heart racing so fast. I couldn't breathe. I was in the middle of a supraventricular tachycardia episode. My BPM was 210. Had to go to the ER and get drugs to slow it down. I was absolutely terrified I was going to have a heart attack that night. Scary stuff. Sleep paralysis. Absolutely terrifying the first time. Every time. When I was about 12 I got woken up by a middle of the night phone call which I heard my mom answer. She was told my sister had been in a car accident. It was a bad wreck and one of her friends was killed. Luckily my sister made it, but I will never forget the sounds of my mom screaming and crying as her and my dad left for the hospital. I woke up to a bright orange window thinking it was just something strange or that I was just dreaming. Went back to sleep. Woke up again some time later in realization and ran to tell my mother. The neighbor's shed was on fire and our fence and cherry tree were catching fire as well. Still remember standing in the middle of the night looking at the fire and all the ash falling. A SWAT team banging on my door responding to hostage situation called in from a cell phone mistakenly registered to my home. The new 911 database apparently had some issues with area codes. They were expecting a knife-wielding assailant and instead got me in my robe. I opened the door to 6 assault rifles trained on me. I'm very thankful their trigger discipline was good. Even when I shouted in alarm. The flip side is that someone else was having an even worse night. When their 911 call that had to be automatically traced because they couldn't talk to the dispatcher failed to result in the needed response. Grabbed by 2 escorts and flown to Mexico for an abusive behavior modification program when I was 17. Hugh, either you meant escorts in the other sense. I was quite confused. That sounds like it sucked though. Jeez. I once woke up from a nightmare and was still half asleep. Thought I saw some kind of a person sitting at the corner of my bed and I wasn't able to move or scream, because still half asleep at that point. When I finally was awake enough to move I tried to smash that person and then realized I still was dreaming. Tried to get asleep after this happened but wasn't able to because of the adrenaline I received. I think this was my worst night and most scariest thing I ever woke up at the middle of the night. When my daughter was an infant we had one of those heart monitors on her foot at night. Apparently the thing will occasionally throw a false red alert alarm. Randomly. Even though nothing is wrong. It happened twice. You go from full REM, dead to the world sleep to adrenaline pumping. Flight or fight response in 5 seconds. I do not recommend it. I have an electronic door lock. Late one night. I heard the beeps from the lock over and over and over. 4 beeps every time. I grabbed my phone and checked ring. Com. No one there. I went out on my balcony and the beeping continued. I finally pinpointed it. Effing mockingbird learned my lock tones and scared the crap out of me. My wife punched me in the goods while I was sound asleep. When I woke up screaming she woke up too and was unsure why I was hysterical. She said she was fighting someone in a dream. After my son was born, my fatherly instincts kicked into overdrive. One uncharacteristically quiet night, I heard someone trying to break into our house. Without a word I jumped out of bed. Ran out the bedroom. Like the ultimate warrior. Down the hall. Past the kitchen. Through the living room. To the front door. I burst through the front door to find Our neighbors had ordered a pizza. I woke up to someone whistling a really sad tune outside. At first it was distant, but it got louder as it came closer and eventually stopped right under my bedroom window. The person stayed there for at least 10 minutes and I was scared shitless. I didn't dare peek through the blinds. The next morning I checked the yard. Sure enough, there were footprints in the dirt under my window. I never figured it out and I don't really want to.